Hey guys, today we're talking about the 3 reasons why you need to take your compliance responsibilities seriously before you get caught up in an investigation and are held personally liable as CCO. If we take recent guidance issued by the Department of Justice, FINRA, and the SEC to heart, then we know that we are entering a new era of CCO liability. First, the Department of Justice intends for CCO certifications to be part of every corporate resolution going forward. You heard that correctly. The certifications are meant to empower CCOs and make sure they have a seat at the table. The certification also requires the CCO and CEO to certify that the company's compliance program is reasonably designed to detect and prevent violations. So here's my question for you. Can you make that certification? Second, on March 17th, 2022, FINRA published Regulatory Notice 2210, reminding broker-dealers of the scope of liability for CCOs under FINRA's supervision rule, Rule 3110, if you couldn't remember it. FINRA clarifies in Reg Notice 2210 only in circumstances where a firm has expressly or impliedly designated its CCO as having supervisory responsibility will FINRA bring an enforcement action against a CCO for supervisory deficiencies. FINRA looks at the facts and circumstances to determine whether a CCO should be held personally liable. So you may be wondering, what the hell does this mean? Well, let's talk about some aggravating factors where FINRA has documented in their litigation releases and enforcement investigations circumstances under which a CCO would be held personally liable. Those aggravating factors include awareness of multiple red flags or awareness of actual misconduct where you have failed to take steps to address them. Another aggravating factor is your failure to establish, maintain, update, or enforce your firm's written supervisory procedures. FINRA would also determine you are personally liable as CCO where your supervisory failure resulted in a violation of other rules and regulations. And they're also going to look at whether your conduct caused, like actually caused, or created a likelihood of customer harm. Now, yes, these are the aggravating factors, but there's some mitigating factors as well. Mitigating factors include whether the CCO was given insufficient staffing. How many of you have those? Budget and training. Whether the CCO had several competing functions and responsibilities. So those of you who are CCOs and COOs and maybe also CEOs and maybe also CFOs, or maybe you're actually a producer and you're a broker as well, something to consider. Whether the supervisory responsibilities were poorly defined or designated, whether the firm underwent structural changes, and whether you as CCO attempted to escalate all these red flags up to leadership and they were like, nah, you're good. So while there are aggravating factors and mitigating factors, you have a lot of responsibility under FINRA Rule 3110. And it's under that rule that you as CCO will be held personally liable. Now we're going to talk about the third reason why you as CCO have to be super careful so you can avoid personal liability. Investment Advisor Act Rule 2064-7C, which requires investment advisors to designate a CCO that is responsible for administering the RIA's compliance policies and procedures, is not a delegation like under the FINRA Rule 3110, but rather an undertaking of supervisory responsibility. This would imply, consistent with FINRA's guidance, that in the case of RIA CCOs, yes, that may be you, You should be held personally liable as you are actually responsible for supervision, not simply delegated compliance responsibilities by your CEO. So I'm going to give you a real life example that's very recent. Because I don't know, you may not have noticed, the SEC's put out a ton of litigation releases where CCOs like you have been held personally liable. So here's one. In the US SEC versus Eric S. Hollifield, a Georgia advisor misappropriated $1.7 million from 2 advisory clients and 1 brokerage customer. He used that money to pay for personal expenses, including the purchase of a home, 37 acres in gorgeous rural Georgia kind of home. The SEC charged Hamilton Investment Counsel, the RIA that Hollifield co-owned, and Jeffrey Kirkpatrick, the RIA's CCO, for failing to implement the firm's policies and procedures. By inadequately responding to numerous red flags regarding Hollifield's outside business activities. Yes, you heard that right. Don't sit here and tell me you have no obligation to supervise OBAs. You do, and this is why. The CCO, Kirkpatrick, agreed to a cease and desist order and a civil penalty of $15,000, which he personally had to pay, and the imposition of a 5-year limitation on his ability to act in a supervisory or compliance capacity. The firm, the RIA, was fined $150,000. This is real life, y'all. This is where we are headed. You can't say you don't know the rules or how they apply. You can't say you don't have the money or the staffing to do adequate testing. The regulators don't care, and they are going to hold you personally liable as CCO. So if you are concerned, as you probably should be, then why don't you give us a call? We can help you clean up your compliance program, and you can even offload some of that responsibility on our team. So give us a call at 770-462-2118 so we can give you some peace of mind and prevent you from being held personally liable in enforcement action.